Hello, welcome to Cthulhu Reviews. Today I'm going to be reviewing Civil War Battles, which is a set of American Civil War rules published by Peter Pig in their Rules for the Common Man rules system. So I'm going to be using a Little Wars TV rules review system. So I'm going to grade it on 5 areas: presentation worth 10%, playability worth 30%, mechanics worth 30%, historical flavour worth 20%, and support worth 10% at the end. So let's crack in with presentation. So what we have here, published in 2007, it says it's a complete rules system for the American Civil War. It's black and white throughout. Okay, as we can see, there's plenty of photographs, and it's got pieces of art throughout as well. So by modern standards, it does look a bit dated in terms of a rule book. You know, modern ones tend to be full colour throughout, etc. It does come with a fast play sheet, which is in glossy card. Fast play sheet and the covers are in colour, and actually the colours used helps you navigate the tables, which is nice. When it says it's a complete rule set, it is a complete rule set. So it's got your army rule composition, it's got a scenario system, which I'll talk about in a bit, the rules itself, and some notes and stuff about collecting armies in the period. It's also got some scenarios at the back and notes on how you'd create your own scenarios as well. So I give it a good 6 out of 10 for presentation. Actually, it's in terms of getting around the rule book as well. Everything's clearly labelled in its own section, and it does have an index. Playability. So this set of rules are designed to be played on a kitchen table, and it's meant to give you a decent game in an evening as well. So 600 points is what it works out. It should be played in about 2 hours. As it says before, the rules are clear, and throughout it all, it's got both examples backed up with photographs, and it's got some boxes which remind you about other things or rules to consider and how it interacts as well. The rules itself are 43 pages, talking about the mechanics of the rules, and that includes pictures and diagrams, etc. Certainly during my second playthrough, I didn't really need to consult the rules much, and the quick reference sheet basically had everything I needed. Now, the real stellar part of this book is book 2, which is called Pre-Game Actions. It's page 34 to 68, so it's at 34 pages. And it's a section which allows you to create a scenario. So 2 players turning up with 600 points. It allows you to create a scenario for that evening, which gives a lot of thought and feeling, almost like a mini campaign in itself. Creating a scenario on the fly, which will talk about your objectives, your table setup, and what you want to achieve if you're not going to play a scenario. And how it works is a series called War Point Dice. So there's 10 categories with this, from attacker and defender, which is the most important one, and then there's 9 other ones, for example, subterfuge, battle plan clarity, rail, cavalry. And what you'll do is you've got 90 points to assign between those areas. And at the start of the game, you'll roll a dice for each area that you've assigned the points to. So for example, if we're talking attacker or defender, if I've put 25 dice in, 25 points, each one's a dice, and you've put 20 points in, I roll 25 dice, a 5 or a 6 is a success for me, and you'd roll your 20 dice for 5 or success. So if you've got 7 successes and I've got 10 successes, I've won. I'm the attacker by 3 degrees. So then we'd look at the thing, you'd be a defender, and your troops would be affected up to whatever 3 points would do. And you do that with everything. So for example, what that looks like is looking at random events. So I've got 1 success, and it says here the flavour is General Nathan Butland gets horribly mauled by a bear. A new general is needed for his division. What the game effect is, re-roll a command value dice for your worst divisional general. This is an optional roll, therefore it need not be used. If used, it must be accepted. Or for example, subterfuge, 1 success. The enemy is said to be in Baxter, some 16 miles east of this position. A brigade is needed to cover the Mux Valley. Effect, the opponent must remove 1 brigade from the table They lose 2 bases and become reinforcements as they have been sent via Baxter. So straight away that gives you a whole load of sort of both flavourful effects and in-game effects as well, creating a scenario for the evening. So in terms of playability, army size, the example army given at 600 points in the rules is approximately 60 bases. At 4 models a base, that works out at about 240 figures, which I think is fairly achievable. You can also play scenarios and create your own scenarios in there as well. I give playability 8 out of 10. Certainly after my first game, got well into it. I've been able to throw together my armies, designed for kitchen table, decent game in an evening. So mechanics, what does it physically look like and feel like on the battlefield? It works on the idea that you have divisions, and divisions will be made of brigades. Brigades is the smallest fighting unit that it has in the game. Could easily be replaced, the term brigade, with regiments if you wanted as well. Regiments and divisional commanders being brigade commanders. So what happens is your divisional commander will motivate your brigades. Once they're motivated, they basically get D6 modified by maybe raw or elite troops. And that gives you action points. And that will determine movement. You spend action points to move, turn, deploy limbers, and 2 action points to shoot. But you can only shoot a maximum of twice per turn. Every unit, even if it's failed to motivate it, every unit gets a minimum of 1 AP. You've also got on top of that your overall general, your corps commander can move towards a divisional commander general, and he can give him bonuses as well for the round. So you're going to be putting your major general at the point of what you want more stuff to happen. Now the interesting thing with AP, and one of the things I really love about the rules, is how it affects movement. So the wider your formation, the more bases you get to fire, but the less movement you're able to do. Whereas the narrower the formation, the more movement you're able to do. And there's a simple way to work that out in the rules. That gives you a very interesting command decisions as a general, especially when we've talked about units being off the board and reserve based on the scenario, and a lot of that will happen. Is at what point are you the attacker? At what point are you going to start sacrificing movement for widening out to attack to form your line of battle? And even when you're forming your line of battle, if you've only got one line, you'll have less support in melee as well. So if you're wanting to do some fire and then attack, well, how deep you're going to leave that formation against incoming firepower as well. Units are graded green, average, or veteran. So I said elite earlier, veteran. With bonuses, motivation, morale, and save. So what that would look like, for example, in the shooting phase, is everything hits on a 5 or a 6. 6 if it's an obscured target, maybe shooting troops which are behind fortifications. You get rerolls based on quality, so raw rerolls 1s, average 1s and 2s, and veterans 1, 2, or 3. Bases get removed as casualties, but each base basically has 2 hit points. A base is fully effective till it's removed. So your brigades will start getting smaller as casualties start taking effect. So your battle looks, and you can visually see the state of models of units on the battlefield. The other pretty cool thing with that, with the rules as well, is melee has falter tests. So before you get to charge in, you'll take a falter test for your unit to see if it can actually get stuck in with a bayonet. And actually, the enemy troops might just run away. And another really smart touch is reaction fire. So during your opponent's turn, you can fire once with each one of your units at any time in reaction to something the enemy's done. And in an I go, you go system, that keeps me, the player, during my opponent's turn engaged. And actually, again, there's a lot of interesting technical choices there of, am I going to use a unit, try and get that unit to fire before another unit sweeps in and charges and attacks. So you do get a lot of tactical decisions on that level as well. So for mechanics, 8 out of 10, a good solid 8 out of 10, pushing a 9. Very visual game. It's everything I like in a war game. Easy to pick up. Veterans feel like veterans and raw units feel like raw units. But with that as well, it's balanced. So at the end, when you totten up victory points, your veterans give the opponent, if you lose a load of veterans, it gives your opponent a lot more victory points than if you lose raw troops. So if you were creating an army rather than using a scenario list, and you do create the Death Star division of veterancy and use that to try and steamroll the enemy, well, the casualties they're going to take doing it is actually going to cost you dear at the end. You also have a morale clock for scenarios as well, so you don't quite know when it's going to end either. So you kind of just sit back and pummel the enemy with artillery and then sweep in on turn 5, knowing the game's going to end in turn 6. You don't quite know that. Historical flavour. The scenario creation, which I've discussed already, feels good and gives you a whole load of flavourful thing with that. It's got lots of army lists. So I think it's got 3 army lists for early, mid and late war, for the Confederacy and the Union, but it's also got the same army list for the East and for the West as well, and with the British and the French intervention options as well. The other thing it does with the army lists is the bonuses it gives is based on the war points. So, for example, what that looks like is the 1862 to 3 lists, the Union have +3 supply. Now, this is good because it's not 3 supply successes, it's dice. So some games it'll be awesome, some games it won't be so awesome. And it kind of pushes the Union to make sure to add that their supplies are going to be something that they're going to decide to put a lot of more war points in to take real advantage of that +3. Whereas the Confederacy have +1 in subterfuge, battle plan clarity, political pressure, roads and rail, and +2 in strong leadership. So Confederacy gets a lot more spread out, but they're less likely to gain any bonus from that. But that's the sort of areas that they're going to put it in as well. So it gives your armies bonuses without taking away from the armies. And those bonuses may or may not come into effect for the game, and it affects the scenario. And games I've played feel like the American Civil War. Get the troops up to the firing line, push where you can, manage those reserves. And as I said before at the start, the attacker and defender for war points, the defender suffers a lot of attrition and decisions about whether troops are going to be in the battle line or held in reserve, what they're going to take. And not knowing exactly what state your army is going to be when it gets to the battlefield, I think gives it a lot of historical flavour as well. Certainly something we don't see in a lot of games. I'd love to see a World War II game, for example, where if you're the Germans, you're going to suffer from rules like that represent your fuel economy, which was a major factor for the Germans in World War II. Certainly on campaign, your Lee's invasion of Maryland, for example, leading to the Antietam campaign, I think about a third of his army melted away. You know, that's going to have a major impact on the battles, which actually had a major impact at Antietam. So far I've played a generic scenario with the rules. I've wrote my own Dunkers Church Antietam scenario, which we've played twice, and I've also played the Newmarket scenario from the book twice as well. And the games felt how I'd expect them to feel. Certainly the Dunkers Church Antietam, the Confederacy really suffered from the attrition at the start. So their initial lines weren't looking very strong at all. And the Union were able to push up, but the quality of the Confederate troops and the reserves coming in managed to hold it. And it was a difference in victory points that the Confederacy had, which both times basically won the scenario for them. And I remember a piece, I think it was Johnny Reb Rules, first or second edition back in the 90s, and it talked about units in real life faltering, falling back, rallying, going back in, up to 10, 30 times during an engagement. And certainly that's what a lot of units looked like and felt like during this game as well. And pulling units back, getting them back into some sort of shape, pushing them back up into the line. So yeah, historical flavour, I'd give it a good solid 8 out of 10 again. Support. So quick section here. Either printed or PDF. I believe this rule book is the only printed material for it. I've not needed an FAQ for it, but certainly I've not really seen an FAQ for it. Quick Googling, I couldn't find much in the way of support, but the book really is supports itself. I'm going to give it 3 out of 10, mainly because it's complete, in my opinion, in itself. So, final scores on the doors. Presentation, 6 out of 10. Playability, 8 out of 10. Mechanics, 8 out of 10. Historical flavour, 8 out of 10. Support, 3 out of 10. Giving it a grand total of 73 out of 100. So, for me, this is my go-to set of rules for American Civil War at the moment. I've got Fire and Fury and Pickett's Charge to run through and do some games with, and once I've played some games with those, I'll do some rules review. I'll play at least 5 games of each and get a real good feel for the rules before I do a review. I've also got Washington's Army, which is the American War of Independence version of this, and already I've seen some different troop types and some different rules for that, so I'll be interested to see how that affects historical flavour for the War of Independence games. So at the moment, a great set of rules. If I was wanting to play some Civil War battles, this would be my go-to set of rules. I have played in the 90s, for reference, Johnny Reb and Fire and Fury were the ones I played back in the 90s. So anyway, that's my experience. If you've had any experiences with this set of rules, if you've got any thoughts, I'm happy to chat through them and hear what you think about it. And I'm hoping you're having an awesome hobby time at the moment. And I look forward to seeing you again in another video. Okay, that's bye for now. Bye.